there, and welcome to Spotlight On. I am Xanthi Smith, filling in for our GM of Marketing and Brand, and today's focus is all things cloud. Joining me today is Shannon Moir, Director for JD Edwards, and Kris Jackson, GM for Cloud Infrastructure and Security. Hello and welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Xanthi.
In this edition, we're going to be touching on 4 key areas relating to cloud that have the greatest impact on the value of cloud to businesses. That includes cloud economics, cloud migration, cloud maturity, and data and AI. So without further ado, let's dive straight in with cloud economics. So we know that Microsoft have done some major investments, $5 billion to be exact, into the expansion of Australia, which emphasises the significant economic benefits and cost efficiency of cloud services. They project that it will double in size by 2026. But what exactly does cloud economics mean? Shannon, let's start with you.
Yeah, great. Well, I think it's quite a subjective term, because really cloud economics for a customer is how much the cloud is costing them for what they're using. And interestingly, the cloud will charge you for every second and every minute of every resource that you are occupying on the cloud. So I think it's really important to be able to predict that before you move to the cloud, and then also have really good visualization over the top of your existing assets, so you know if it's spiky, or if it's up or down, and that predictability of your cloud-based workload is really important from an economic point of view.
Awesome. Is there anything you'd add to that, Kris?
I think Shannon's done a good job to to summarise that. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, what we've seen over the last 5 years is that a lot of companies have gone into the cloud without considering what the cost implications are. And once they're in the cloud, then obviously there's a lot of sprawl happening where they're going out, their teams are utilising more services, and then from a CFO or CIO perspective, then they're not understanding where all these cost increases are coming from. And it takes quite a significant amount of time to dig into where that information is, but also understand the impact of those services. So I think it's a really important topic to discuss as part of an initial stage of thinking about moving into a cloud environment.
Awesome. We talk a lot about a lot of businesses being in the cloud, and cloud computing obviously isn't new. There's been a major rush of migration from on-premises applications and storage to the cloud about 20 years ago. So we assume that surely most businesses have made a move by now. Before I dive into the real question, I just wanted to know, out of interest, do you think there are any businesses not currently operating in the cloud? Open floor.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. So there's actually a significant amount of organizations that have not moved their infrastructure workloads into a cloud platform. And, if you look at the stats, it's still a huge amount in percentage across Australia and New Zealand. There's also a lot of private cloud occupiers and data centers out there that have been hosting those services for a long time. And larger organizations seen the boom of cloud, but they also considered the cost implications of their investments at that time and haven't moved into the cloud. And so there is still a significant amount of customers out there that are leveraging on-premises solutions.
Yeah, and I think I agree, Christian. I think also there are real reasons why some customers can't move to cloud yet, and there are latency based reasons that RF scanning guns have to be completely connected like immediately. They can have a low latency environment, and also internet connections for remote customers, where you do need 2 separate internet connections to be able to give proper DR from a connectivity point of view, and that can't be guaranteed in certain locations.
Oh, here I was thinking that most people have some form of their business in cloud and probably just didn't even realize it. So it's good to kind of put that in perspective. And you kind of already touched on it, but AWS, Microsoft, Google, they're all on track to opening their new data centers here in New Zealand, which is driving a strong push toward hybrid and multi-cloud models. So I'll start with you this time, Kris. What do you think are the key drivers for migrating in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think there's a huge amount of investment going into New Zealand at the moment, especially around the big players, which is exciting to see for all of our New Zealand customers. The big drivers at the moment is really, you've got aging hardware, you've got aging skill set potentially within the organisation, and you're really looking to try and adapt and access the power of cloud technology. It's still always been those fundamental reasons where there's a lot of investment going in. You mentioned, a few $1 billion worth of investment coming through, and that's all really targeted at cloud modernization and services. And therefore, if customers are not able to access that or take that first step to being able to bring that into their business, then they are falling slightly behind. But it doesn't mean that it's all doom and gloom. They need to be really considerate about what services they're leveraging, but also ensuring that they consider the financial impacts of those services as well.
Awesome. And what are the other benefits and challenges of migrating today, do you reckon, Shannon?
In terms of benefits, I think like security is a big benefit, and commonly people think it's the opposite. But I think you get a more secure environment when you move to cloud, because you get into an all doors locked environment immediately, which is really beneficial for our customers. And again, I think there's two things that I think are also important. It's that if you're working at a company that doesn't have a cloud presence, the employees want to get involved in cloud. They want to modernize their skills. So that's really important to get people in a modern cloud environment. And then the second thing that I was going to mention about migrating to cloud is the ability to plug into those modern services natively. And I don't want to, I'm sure people may not have heard this concept before, generative AI, but if you want to plug into AI, or if you want to take advantage of your data, when it's in the cloud, you can plug in those particular services quickly and natively and make better and faster decisions for your business.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I mean, if there are companies out there that are considering the move to cloud now, there's actually a really good time to be considering that, because, I mean, there's been hundreds of thousands of migrations. There's the cloud adoption framework that's been developed for multiple public cloud platforms that, has been built around learnings and lessons from all of those migrations. And so the framework's there, it's mature, the assessment tools are mature.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of stuff out there now in terms of infrastructure as code that is matured. So it's a great time to be able to access and leverage those cloud technologies.
Yep.
And,
it's a great point.
engaging the right partner is probably going to be the right, the right considerations that need to be made, because they need to be cloud agnostic. They need to also consider some of those hybrid scenarios, because you don't want to just go with someone that's advising you to go to one particular cloud without understanding your needs and what your workloads are. So it's a great time to be considering it, and there's a lot of help out there, especially from those cloud agnostic advisors.
Would you guys say, this is a bit of a left of field question, but I think the perception is that migrating to the cloud is quite complex, it's cumbersome, it freaks people out, it's a costly exercise. But do you think that it's matured enough now that actually it's not as difficult as people think, and that most of the focus now is probably more on looking at how to innovate with the cloud as opposed to actually getting onto the cloud?
Yeah, a lift and shift or a rehosting, I believe, is a really simple undertaking, and there are recipes for being able to do that on any public cloud. And I think that's easy. It's when you start to reshape a workload, and it's exactly what you said, Xanthi, is that when you want to make the most of the cloud, or maybe use a few more cloud services in that migration, then that does start to get a little bit more complex and take a little bit more time. But guess what? You'll get a lot more out of it as well. So it's a fine line between how much you reshape your workload on that migration journey.
Yeah,
awesome.
and
Awesome.
I completely agree. And a lot of the discussions we're having right now with our customers is they come to us looking to rehost or replatform their environment. And, we look at some of those things at the very beginning and go, okay, you've got 50 virtual machines. But when you actually do the workload analysis and you look at consolidation and you look at right sizing some of those environments, you can bring that down to 20 virtual machines that could be then migrated. So back in the day, there was a lot of lift and shift partners out there that would just grab whatever's there and put it in the cloud. They would get the maximum return in terms of their consumption of those services from a partner recognition perspective. But that's not the best thing for the customer, and it's definitely not what the customers out there will be looking for.
Yeah, good.
Which actually leads in beautifully to my next question, which is discuss the considerations between public, private, and multi-cloud, and I guess also hybrid. Who wants to start?
It's complex. It's a complex world out there. It's one of the challenges that you'll see when assessing your workloads and looking at the different options. But I mean, I wouldn't overcomplicate it too much. I mean, I think looking at what you're trying to actually get from the cloud, assessing the business needs and wants, but also then what your workloads are that are on premises, looking through that. There could be some of those workloads that are legacy, you need them around for the next 5 years. They're going to be static. You may want to put them on a hybrid cloud or somewhere that's a little bit more static and controlled. There could be some more modern constructs that you want to leverage. Therefore, there's services in the cloud that you're wanting to test out or to utilize. And therefore, again, you just be testing that out. There's also large organizations out there that want to de-risk their environment by leveraging multi-cloud, putting their workloads where they're best suited in terms of cost and benefits of those resources. And so there's a whole bunch of considerations, but it really does depend on the business size, the business needs, and just making sure there's a really transparent understanding of cost.
Is there anything you'd add to that, Shannon?
I'd say that you don't want to wear out your SIs when you're choosing the cloud options to go to. But what a customer might want to do is, instead of evaluating the 3 major public clouds, potentially they should put it into the mix of a hybrid option or maybe some sort of on-premise option, just so that they get that complete view of what is the return on investment, what is the total cost of ownership, and then they can make a really good decision based upon that.
Sweet, which we can now beautifully round off the cloud migration portion with top 3 pieces of advice for CTOs considering to migrate to the cloud.
I mean, from my perspective, I think, understanding workloads, number one. Leverage some of the tooling and the assessments out there that give you a lot of information, a lot of data to make some decisions on, and just make sure that you're working with, if you're going to get advice from the market, working with someone that is cloud agnostic and technology agnostic so they can give you the best advice.
Yeah, and I think turn everything into infrastructure as code, and EAC, everything is code, pipelines for absolutely everything. The more automation you have in place, the more playbooks you have in place, you'll have a more efficient, more secure, a better run environment going forward. And putting that maturity in the beginning and choosing the right partner to help you with that level of maturity for your business is super important. Don't lose sight of security. That, like, I've been involved in too many customers that have a security issue, and so have continuous management and monitoring on your security and any vulnerabilities that come into play. And then finally, being a commercial guy, look out for the economics. Make sure that you're treating your cloud costs and having ongoing continuous improvement projects around cloud costs.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're moving towards, customers who have their cloud strategy in place and looking to mature that. So, considerations around cost optimization, sustainability, and leveraging emerging techs like AI and IoT are key aspects of achieving this maturity. What does that cloud maturity look like for a business that has all of this in place?
Yeah, I mean, so what I see over the last 5 years is that a lot of environments that are in cloud have actually been built on potentially not the right baseline or the right landing zone to start with. And so there's been a lot of work more recently understanding from the market around, well, what is a best practice landing zone or a foundation for me to grow my cloud resources? And so a lot of the work we're doing now and what is being implemented is actually assessing the current state, but also deploying a brand new landing zone and starting to migrate resources into that. And I think that's the best way that customers can reduce some of that technical debt that they may have inherited through their initial cloud migration. And then leveraging that infrastructure as code and everything as code to be able to really standardize it in their environments. And so cloud maturity is making sure that you've assessed those landing zones, but also use a lot of the information out there from the public cloud providers around the well-architected framework, the pillars of success, making sure you understand the cost, the sustainability, the efficiency, all of the security elements. So, it's really important to use that information that's out there.
Yeah, and in this continuously changing environment, people based their cloud deployments upon rules like data egress costs money. And guess what? Quite recently, all of that completely changed, and it might change the way that you'd lay out your cloud in a modern environment, and hence continuous improvement and continuously looking at your costs and making adjustments as you move along.
Excellent, thank you. Now the next part, I know Shannon, you're quite passionate about this, so we'll definitely start with you, but looking at data and AI, I read that Microsoft's investment in the AI infrastructure aims to boost Australia's economy by up to a whopping 115 billion annually by 2030. Just a small number.
Yeah.
Which is obviously highlighting the transformative potential of AI and cloud services. But in your opinion, what is the role and impact of data and AI in the context of businesses using the cloud to, say, save money, increase security, improve accessibility, and provide greater storage?
Yeah, AI is amazing, and the more we're seeing the power of AI, and especially generative AI, and how that has been commoditized, and people have understood exactly what it does, people are starting, and it's a journey, but people are only starting to see the advantages of what can be done with AI. And when you talk about that investment, they're investing in GPUs and they're investing in hardware to be able to train large language models to then really help us make better, faster decisions. And I'm going to bring it right back to that simple statement: help customers make faster and better decisions. It has to be based upon that, because we're seeing too many proof of concept projects, and we're seeing too many projects not giving the customer the value that was promised at the beginning of the project. I think there's a statistic like 75 to 90% of projects aren't revealing the benefits that were on their initial papers. And so what we want to do is be problem focused and have real business problems that we're trying to solve with AI. And the fact that that is connected on the same fabric basically as your cloud investments means that you can tap into those services quickly and efficiently. Remember that data in cloud also, it's a very low cost. Of course, you'll do your cloud economics, but laying out data and keeping it in some sort of cold storage on the cloud is low cost compared to compute and compared to databases, etc. So you got to know how to lay that data down, know how to lay it down inexpensively, and then how to hook up services to that to get to be able to make better and faster decisions for the business.
Excellent. Is there anything that you'd want to add to the data AI piece, Kris?
I don't think I can follow that up, to be honest. I think Shannon's touched on all of the great points around the benefits, but also I guess we're in a very early stage of AI and accessing that technology, and it's the shiny new thing that everyone's talking about, but they aren't correlating that back to what is the actual business outcome that they're wanting to achieve.
So the takeaway here is watch the space, keep watching the space.
Yeah, I heard a really interesting statement that everything looks like a nail if you've got an AI hammer in your hand, and we've just got to make sure we get past that we're using it for real problems where it can make a real benefit.
I like that quote. I'm going to remember that one. I quite like this next section. So myths about the cloud, and I wanted to start because I'm an expert. Public service announcement: the cloud is not a bunch of data particles floating in the sky somewhere. But jokes aside, what are some of the myths that you think we should be busting about cloud today?
I think one of the big things that I think has changed over the last 3 years is the ability to access cloud resources from on-premises solutions. So Microsoft, AWS, they went all in on migrating everything to the cloud, putting all their marketing out there, putting everything out there to promote that cloud's the best location for all your resources. And then, there was not as much adoption of the cloud, and therefore they're going, well, wait a minute, we need to now modernize some of our on-premises solutions. We need to make our technology available to anyone and anywhere. And so a lot of the latest cloud technologies can actually now be brought down to the edge devices, to on-premises solutions. And there's only small amount of limitations around what you can and can't access. So I think the big myth out there is I need to be in the cloud to access the latest technology. Yes, that is true, but there's a little asterisk, and it says as long as you've got some on-premises or some other endpoints that are connected to a cloud in some way, you can also access the benefits of the cloud. And I think that's a really important statement to make.
Awesome. Shannon, have you got a myth?
My myth is, and I think I touched on it earlier, is that things are insecure in the cloud. I really think it's been engineered, designed, and all of the patterns of deploying workloads to the cloud reiterate the fact that all doors are closed and only things that you open will be open. And then there's automatic reports that are running over the top of your entire cloud infrastructure telling you about any vulnerabilities that might exist. Like, it is a more secure place to be when it's done right and when you use best practice. And that's it. And just this different way of thinking of how you manage and monitor your environment, it's a really exciting space for everyone in tech.
I want to push your myth just a little further. Do you think that public cloud is less secure than a private cloud option?
No, in general, I think, well, I'm not, I think both of those can be extremely secure is how I'll answer that question, because that's a subjective question. It depends on a person's implementation of said cloud, but they both can be made extremely secure. You've got all of the banks in Australia using public cloud for their assets. They're FIRB approved, et cetera, et cetera. These are very, very, very secure environments.
Awesome. Okay, nearly at the end. If there was one piece of advice you'd give to an executive leadership team regarding migrating or maturing their cloud strategy, what would it be? Kris.
I honestly think that all comes down to understanding the workloads, and I think leveraging, like what we've talked about on today's call, is understanding the workloads, leveraging partners in the market, but not just partners that are out there as a traditional MSP that are doing lift and shift migrations and very technology focused migrations. Leverage a company like Fusion 5 that has those battle scars from looking at applications and large enterprise environments and moving them into the cloud, difficult and complex integrations, leverage that knowledge and bring it back to a simplified view of how companies should be moving and leveraging cloud resources. I think it's a really important thing to lean on in the market, and just don't be afraid of actually looking at some of the on-premises based solutions. The hybrid cloud is very popular at the moment, and there's a reason why. The technology has evolved, and the costing model is completely different to what you see in the cloud construct. So don't be afraid to invest in some tin again. And leverage partners that they have the capabilities to deploy that tin, and then it becomes just like any other cloud service. You're leveraging those services as an outsourced managed service.
Jen?
Yeah, that was great. And I'm going back to my nerdy roots here, and I would say that please consider things like Terraform and Bicep. Please consider pipelines. Please consider Git to have versioning of all of your code and be able to redeploy when you need to. Be super flexible about how you deploy your patches, etc. Think about things like Puppet and Ansible, and even for the CIOs, if you play this back to your more nerdy teams, they'll be nodding, because these are the sorts of things that you must think about and consider. And don't rush to the cloud. Do things properly, and all the advantages of the cloud are going to come your way.
Excellent. I wanted to sidestep into the headlines really quickly. We've recently heard about the UniSuper incident, which underscores the importance of robust disaster recovery plans. Despite their multi-region backups, they faced significant disruption due to misconfiguration. I wanted to ask you guys, what are some of the latest strategies for disaster recovery and business continuity in the cloud that you would recommend to customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on what cloud platform you're deployed on, there's so many options. There's replication back to other availability zones. There's replication back to on-premises. There's more modern constructs around backups. There's a huge amount of alerts built into these platforms to let you know that systems are not backed up or they're not configured in the right way. So actually being and paying attention to those alerts and advisory settings, because there's a lot there that can be a bit of a surprise. But as we've talked about on this call, leveraging that infrastructure as code, validated code and deployment structures are really important. It means that they've been proven, they're verifiable, and they're obviously a lot more reliable.
Yeah, in my reading, That felt like bad luck to me, the Uni Super case, because they were doing, it seems that they were doing everything right. They had pipelines, they had multi-availability zone and multi-region deployments, and that was their DR. It obviously wasn't tested appropriately. So I will say that hand on heart, that you have to test your DR, and being in the cloud allows you to test your DR much easier, because you can deploy that pipeline at any day, any week, any month, and you should be able to rebuild an entire environment that easily and that simply. So we like to think of DR as not an afterthought anymore. It's built into the primary solution. So we ensure that is highly available and disaster recoverable from the get-go, but the testing component, that's really important.
Awesome. And then last but not least, VMware. So many customers are experiencing difficulties with renewal processes, including drastic price increases and changes in the product offerings. And I don't want to bash VMware, obviously, but how can organizations address some of these challenges that they're facing?
I think it's been a real shock to the market, and I think the good thing from the big major players out there, they're really incentivizing and supporting the customers to be able to move away from some of those VMware-based solutions and onto a construct that will be obviously more cost effective, but also allow them to modernize and move forward. So I think it's a good time right now to be able to leverage that. There's a huge amount of activity in the partner ecosystem to make sure that there's skills available, there's resources available, and the conversations coming up on the daily in terms of supporting those customers. So I think if customers are experiencing any of that, don't be as concerned as perhaps you were when you first heard the news. There's a lot of options, and it really comes down to, again, assessing the workloads, assessing your skills in-house, making sure that you support that skills transfer if you're going to move to another platform, and then just accessing partners, like us, to be able to advise and support you through that process.
Yeah.
And with everything, yeah.
Yeah, well said, Kris. And I would just say to those customers that feel threatened or have got their bills increased dramatically, a VM's a VM, and you can manage that in many different ways, and that could be cloud native or not. So come and talk to us, and we'll show you how you don't have to abide by those huge new bills.